Right, so I am not going to talk too long up front, but we have an amazing artist here, Evan Lockhart, um, photography, alternative printing processes, doodles, drawing, collage. Am I missing anything, Evan?
No, I think you pretty much spot on all of it.
Awesome. Yeah, I am new to his work, but a big fan instantly, so I'm really excited to have him speak with us today. Take it away.
Awesome. All right. Hey, everybody. I'm Evan Lockhart. I'm a photographer based out of Detroit, Michigan. I recently graduated in May with my MFA from Columbus College of Art and Design. And today I'm gonna show you my thesis work, which is an ongoing series called Trans Manhood. And I'm gonna talk to you about what makes a photograph um, representational, and what does that representation do for the overall truth of the photograph. So I am going to share a screen real quick and load up the presentation. Hold on one second. Okay. All right. So today I'm going to talk to you about trans manhood and the theory of representational transparency. So representational transparency is really the idea that what is in the photograph and why that photograph was taken and why that object or that person or whomever is in the photograph, what is their importance to the overall truth, and how valued is the purpose for taking a photograph with the truth of what the photograph is. And so I'm first going to introduce you to my work. This was my thesis work. I spent a year documenting myself and really documenting my changes on my first year on testosterone, going through my top surgery and things like that. So I'm going to go through the slideshow, and then we're going to go into my online gallery presentation, and then we're going to have some Q&A. So thank you very much. Would you like a men's watch or a woman's watch? This is the question that sparked my thesis. After a summer spent fulfilling my teenage boy dreams, the start of testosterone, a summer as a boys' camp counselor, and an environment in which my gender was accepted, I became complacent. I had adapted to a reality that does not exist within the wider world, a reality in which you declare your identity and so it is. When I re-entered the world, I was ill-prepared. In search of a new watch, I entered Target, and after a fruitless search, I asked an employee where the watches were. This man looked me up and down, stared straight into my eyes and said, "Would you like a men's watch or a woman's watch?" With a quiet rage and a red face, I muttered, "Men's," and left. This idea, this question, the idea that the binarification of gender has encroached upon watches, toothbrushes, water bottles, trash bags, sparked a sense of rage that created a storm of creativity. I left the store, I went to my studio, I looked at a photographic print of my naked body, and I slashed. I slashed every question, I slashed every side glance, I slashed the misgendering, I slashed the pain, the anxiety, the hurt, I slashed blue lines as hair, and I looked. Is this what is needed? Is it the hair I thought? A beard, some of my chest, cut breasts? What?
Hey, Evan, I don't think your volume's working because you're on your headphones, maybe?
Okay. How about now?
No, unfortunately not.
Okay. Sorry about this, y'all. Thank goodness. I am trying to figure this out. I apologize. That work? No?
No, I'm still not hearing much.
Okay. Are you hearing anything?
No, the much was misleading. I'm not hearing anything.
Okay. I'm not quite sure why.
Are you hearing it in your headphones?
I am.
I wonder if it's related to the headphones.
Okay. Let's try it out.
There's also the backup suggestion that I could share the YouTube link if this doesn't work.
Okay.
How did
we got it. We got it.
How the hell Pam
Thank you.
left
Yeah.
close on the steeple of the church. How did I get here? How the hell? Christmas Eve last year. How could a night so frozen be so scalding hot? How could a morning this mild be so raw? Why are entire years strewn on the cutting room floor of memory? When single frames of one magic night forever flickering close up on the 3D IMAX of my mind. That's poetic. That's pathetic. Why didn't Mimi knock on Roger's door and Collins choose that phone booth back where Angel set up his drums? Why did Maureen's equipment break down? Why am I the witness? And when I capture it on film, will it mean that it's the end and I'm alone?
Go ahead and take this with your right hand. And I want to kind of just, first I want you to just orient it, don't get close yet.
Okay.
Hold it like, almost like a dart or a pencil, like you would. And I just want you to line it up perfectly perpendicular. Whenever you're ready, I want you to push through. Push through, all the way down, perfect. Transition to the top, get a good grip on it. You can even use your other hand to stabilize the bottom if you want. And then push fully in. You're doing awesome. That is a great rate. Keep pushing, keep pushing, keep pushing, keep pushing, keep pushing. 1,000, 2,000, pull straight out. You did awesome. Look, you're not even bleeding.
Them skills though. Now look at my face.
So within the trans community, the focus on recording change, both within body and mind, results in the existence of always looking forward and never in the present. We create a new way of seeing ourselves, and through obsessive documentation, our bodies become aesthetic objects. As individuals, our bodies are an ever-changing sculpture that can be molded through hormones, surgeries, and personal trainers into our individual male ideals. Trans manhood utilizes this record keeping and uses a secondary influence, the representational, that is to say, what these photographs represent, in this case, the idea of grasping towards manhood, something that I can imagine and could imagine at the time but could not really understand. You take the representational and you use that to create a fully transparent depiction of the trans experience, one that is truthful, because it uses the idea of why the photograph is being taken as a huge part of the photograph. But while the images I take are partially for the purpose of transparent record keeping, egocentrism, or the focus of self in your work, is a defining factor for each of my photographs. And the representation of that ego is not adequately presented through the purely depicted imagery. And by that, I mean imagery that is quite simply just a photograph. So what I do with this work is I use razor blades to cut out the breasts and to do a hand-done top surgery. And then I use micron pens to physically draw on the prints. Representational transparency values representational intent as a defining factor of the overall image's transparency. That is to say, when a photographer takes an image, even with the intent to not physically manipulate that image, its inherent subjective and egocentric nature is as vital to depicting the truth of that as the objective elements themselves. So, for example, in this photograph, you see me with a angry face, biceps up, kind of your, if you were a young trans boy's typical idea of what a man is. Those are the objective elements. It is underwear, it is breasts, it is a hat, it is bracelets. Those are the objective elements. But the subjective nature of these photographs is that it is a trans man. They are self-portraits. They are created with the intent to edit later to make more aligned with the subject and the subject's intent for the representation with this image. So that's really what representational transparency is, and that's what it does for my work. Trans manhood exploits this idea through the manipulation of photographic gender markers and signifiers. So in this case, the gender marker and gender signifiers would be body hair, facial hair, pose, facial expression, underwear, the use of packers, just anything that I could do to manipulate my appearance. And by removing these breasts and obsessively drawing body hair, I changed the depictive elements of the photograph to align with the subjective reality I experienced as a trans man. So in this way, by editing these images physically, I am really enhancing their correlation to the truth of what the photograph is for, what its intent is, and really what it is saying. For part one of this series, I used a printer as a mark-making tool to symbolize the incomplete nature of both my physical and emotional gender identity. To create, what I did was I would use a roll printer, and I would print out the image, and I would watch it until there was enough information that I could edit later. So for this image, for instance, I wanted the entire face and I wanted at least one breast to show. So I could do a hand cut alteration on that breast. And so to create using a tool that mechanically reproduces a perfect representation of my photograph, and then I stop the printer in a way where it becomes unpredictable, I add further to the egocentrism or the focus on self of the photographic image that I have taken. These test strips, which is a phrase commonly used in photography to represent an image that is not quite there yet, an image that is in progress, an image that is being processed to be the final image. These test strips represent a tentative relationship with my yet to be affirmed masculine archetype and a willingness to create subjective truth out of what is available. Incompleteness of the photographic test strips harken to the traditional darkroom. They also seek the correct exposure of masculinity through a superficial understanding of the ideas of gender based solely on lessons learned through popular culture. For this part of my series, these first 6 images, I did not do any academic research. I didn't really do any anecdotal research. All I did was I observed. I used my preconceived notions of what manhood is. I used my ideas of what I've seen in the media. You know, your archetypal male figure, strong, grounded, suave. You know, the best I could, and these are these ideas. So after I did these test strip images, I moved on to full length and full size images. These prints are, they are 5 feet, or 5.5 feet by 44 inches wide. And I'm going to talk now about the manipulation of the breast.
Evan,
Sorry?
can I pause you a moment? We're losing a bit of audio. I want to try having you go back to your headphones. And what I'm hoping will work is if I sync I've got your Spark page open. I'm on September 6th. Is that your next video?
I am not sure.
Okay. I want to try playing the audio from my end while you present through your headphones. I'm hoping that'll work.
Okay. Okay. Sorry about this, everybody. Is the audio a little bit better now?
Much better.
Okay.
So even if you just need to call out what the date of your video is, I've got everything set up here.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So I use this for the physical manipulation of my breast for these images. I use a hand cup top surgery. For this, I use the same method as my top surgeon, which is to cut the breast below the nipple and to remove the nipple and remove the breast and tuck it in, and then to add the nipple again. So I used that same double incision with nipple graft technique of that future operation, creating a base for intricately drawn body hair. By using this incision method of my future top surgery, I removed the nipple and I cut the breasts in a way in which I could fold them up into the photograph themselves, never removing a part of the original body, but instead altering its appearance. So this was a very important part of this work for me, was to create using my body. To create using, even when if you could look to the right on the arm of this, close up this photograph, to fill in that area in the upper arm, I used another part of the forearm instead of using a different image, or instead of using white, or instead of leaving it incomplete. I used parts of the image to create the new whole. And also by folding up the breast into the image and creating a back plate, I created a sense of depth within the two-dimensional print. So this next video, sound isn't necessary. It's basically just showing kind of process. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay, cool. When creating these images, I use micron pens of the smallest size, so 003 and 005, and I use them to obsessively draw lines that culminate in a hyper-realistic male body hair pattern. These large black and white self-portraits show the evolution and creation of a new identity by manipulating photographic gender markers to ensure the representational transparency, or the idea that I am a man, and which I am trying to represent, and that is the truth that I am trying to represent. And by manipulating these gender markers, I'm ensuring that transparency. Informed by the lessons while creating the test strips, and egged on by the positive effects of my physical training, that I was having on my body, I created an imagery that was life-size. Similar to the test strips, these images are a glimpse of what could and will be, a bridge between my past and future. They are also a record of a quickly changing body and the recognition of an improved skill. By using the entire image and printing it life-size, both myself and my work accept the full image of the present and change that is bound to come. By creating life-size images and hanging them at eye level when I do hang them in the gallery, the prints confront the viewer in a battle for egocentric servitude. So what I mean by this is when you go to a gallery, when you look at a photograph, when you look at a painting, you participate in an egocentric battle. So from your point of view, it is all about what you see in the image, how the image makes you feel, what you think the photographer was taking the image for. That is your egocentrism. When you confront a work that is self-portrait and that is so self-representationally based, you're confronting the photographer with his own ideals, in this case, my ideals, and my egocentrism of the ideas that I have. And so by hanging these at eye level, I allow the viewer and myself to really stare each other down and provide a conversation between a photograph and the viewer. The size and detail involved in the drawings and in the photographs allow people and also bring people in to see and examine them closely, to examine the detail of my body and of its reconstruction. Both the test strips and the full-length pieces rely heavily on the photographic image. This reliance on the depictive, so the photograph, as a mode for representation is something I explore later within my post-operative imagery. And so the next video is this one, November 30th, 2019.
Okay, that is queuing up on my end now. And that's starting now.
Oh my fucking god. I just went into Ace Hardware to buy fucking screws for my new TV stand thing. And I passed. And he was like, "Sir, can I help you with anything?" And I'm like, "Yes, you can help me with anything." And so I got these screws, but they have a hex head. And so he's like, "Well, do you want a socket set?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, $10. I was like, "All right." So I got this socket set and I passed. And it's 1 week out and I'll be at my 6 month on T. And this is my voice. This is my voice. The first time I passed at Ace fucking Hardware.
Okay, and then the next video is top surgery reveal. Closer.
1 sec.
Maybe dentist. Yeah. And on here, there's a little string right here. Right here. Cut the string. Pull it out.
Is that like a heavy duty string or?
Well, I mean, I want to tie something on top of my car with it, but it can hold that little rubber tube in. Okay. This looks good too. So I'm going to show you exactly what to do for dressing changes. Okay?
Can I see it?
Can you see it?
Can I see it first?
Can you see it first? I'll give you a mirror.
Okay,
And the good thing is,
thank you. Sorry about the technical difficulties, everybody. On December 12th, 2019, I had top surgery. The record keeping of this time was imperative for me and for this project. During this time, I set up a backdrop in my mother's house and I photographed myself every other day when I changed my bandages, in order to provide a consistent picture of the first month of healing. These photographs celebrate the pain of gender confirmation surgery through a transparent depiction of the slow but steady healing process involved. The raw nature of these photographs of drains, stitches, scars, and blood narrow the separation between viewer and viewed, strengthening the egocentric relationship between both. By focusing on representation shown through depicted healing within the photograph, representational transparency is used through the body posture and facial expression. As the expressions on my face become gradually more relaxed, the depictive elements, so the body language, the way my face looks, the way that I'm standing and things like that, indicate a level of bodily acceptance of this change through physical healing and emotional acceptance of losing a part of myself to become whole. After my month of convalescence at my mother's house, I returned to my studio to create drawings based off the photographs I had taken. I used pieces of vellum and I overlaid them over the images that I had taken during my top surgery recovery. I was used to working very, very large, like life-size images, and so I wasn't able to raise my head, so I had to adapt. And so in my adaptation, I used vellum drawings and I created these gestures, these sketches. I would overlay the image and tape it down, the vellum image, and tape it down on a photograph. And then I would draw the hair pattern just like I would on any other one of my images. I began by combining pre-op and post-op imagery. So at first my ideas were disjointed. I wanted to be able to represent both the past and the present at the same time. I did this with the idea that my present body can't possibly represent both my femininity and my masculinity, both my womanhood and my manhood. And I found that this dichotomous thinking was exactly what I was trying to break away with this project. So by using images that are full and using the hair and having that be the safe trans body, allowing my body the way it is to describe both my past and my future was really important to me. In order to draw these, I would use a tracing table. This is like a process picture. So what I did after the small drawings was I created life-size drawings of these images. I created them right before COVID shut down my studio. And so I was never able to truly document them, but the this idea of having to change because of COVID, having to change from my thesis exhibition. I don't know how many of you ever went to grad school, but or BFA or anything, but your thesis exhibition, it is the culmination of everything that you've ever done, essentially. And to not be able to have that was really difficult, and not being able to show your work in a way that makes sense was really difficult. But I think that what happened was, because of this inability to show my work in the gallery setting, to show my work in the traditional institution setting, I was able to break away from the constraints of the institution, the constraints of the gallery, who is allowed to see the work, who the work is made for when it is in that institution. I was able to change that by making a website. So now we're gonna go look at my Spark page. So for my thesis, we're encouraged to do an online gallery presentation. I used this as a kind of sense of timeline, in basically like a Facebook-esque motif. You can explore my transition by using cell phone pictures and cell phone photography. You can see my voice updates, which I was, in the beginning of my transition, very, very, very rigorous about doing. And you can scroll through the entire thing in 45 seconds, or you can spend 45 minutes watching every video and watching the whole progression of this project. And so with that, I'm going to conclude and see and talk to Brittany about this work. You're on mute.
So that was awesome. I'm kind of still stuck with the image of you with the micron on the vellum. That seeing it now and the first time I saw it, that's definitely one of my favorite images. I had no idea. Like, I think I saw your work for the first time on either someone sent it to me via email or via Instagram, but it was just one image, still no context. I was like, oh, this is fantastic, really, really cool. But when I saw your video and realized that all of the hair, all of the work that went into it, like every hair in this photo has been hand drawn, and it just gave me another detail entirely to understand your work through, which is what I loved about the Spark Gallery. So can you talk a little bit about maybe taking this from the view that you just had about, getting away from this sort of institutional setting and that traditional gallery setting? Once you started getting into the Adobe Spark Gallery, did that change things for you? Did that bring up new things?
So it really allowed me to do the project the way it was supposed to be done. For my entire graduate, my 2 years, I was trying to figure out what was missing in my photography. I felt like it wasn't fully exploring everything I wanted to, like the medium itself, I wasn't able to really explore. And so when I created this work, I created it for myself, but I also created it for trans people. And as like people that are traditionally like subjugated and traditionally oppressed, the gallery setting a lot of the time is not a welcoming setting. And so by having this work on the Adobe Spark page and allowing people to explore it in their own time and with privacy, I really hope that trans people can kind of see a really open version, a really open recording, like record of a transition that like includes all of the awkwardness, all of the weirdness, without the, the typical celebrated trans masculine body that is muscular and super masculine presenting. And so by using the Spark Gallery, I'm like able to include selfies, which I think for a lot of people, especially in the trans community, it's really important part of documentation is just a simple selfie. Oh, I look this way this week. And especially when you're early on in your transition, you're reaching for anything and everything that looks different. And so by recording on like an obsessive nature, you get all of this work. And so this was the project that I really first realized that my cell phone is a totally valid and useful art creating tool. And it can be used just as well. And as long as the application is, the intent is there, it doesn't really matter what you're photographing on. And I think that's what's powerful about a cell phone, and that's what's powerful about the internet, is that it makes photography accessible. It makes art accessible to people that don't have a traditional accessible nature to art.
Would definitely have to agree with you there. I think there's a lot of power in our pockets these days, and it's really opened up a lot of things. Were there ever times, speaking of how trans people and marginalized people can feel in a gallery setting, where it's not necessarily personal, and there is a certain level of being on display and working with your personal transition through that way? Was there ever a point where it was like too much or too public?
So for me, when I decided to do photographs of my half naked body, which took me never in my life would I think that I would do that. I decided that I was an aesthetic object. So I objectified myself. I decided that my body parts and the way I view myself and the way I photograph myself and doing it with as little editing as possible, that's important, and it's political and it's powerful and it's for other people. I totally slipped my mind on your question. Sorry.
Was there ever, I mean, you're fine. Your thing is totally fine. But was there ever a point where this was too much?
So it's not that it was too much for me. I think it was that my intent for showing this in the gallery was to show it in its entirety, to provide that timeline. But I was, in the art world, that is not the intent a lot of the times, especially when you're doing a group exhibition. It's about, the way it flows for the overall idea. Instead of valuing what the real intent of this work, and that is to provide a transparent timeline for trans people. And galleries, especially when you're sharing them with your entire cohort in grad school, it's not, they don't have, this work is huge. The images are huge. So they just don't have the ability to. And so I think it's never been overwhelming to show my own body. Because I love my body the way it is. I loved, and the breasts are gone now, so they're not attached anymore. So I was like, I mostly figured everything's gonna look different in 6 months anyways, so.
I never thought about that. That's a really good point. So what, and I know you asked, like, I don't know who's gone through this kind of thesis project. I have, and it was also very personal, and it was a very different experience. So some of these questions are coming out of my experience, and I'm just curious. But what were the times where you're, I don't know, featuring more of what's on your mind and not your, the intellectual and maybe the spiritual, not necessarily physical? Were there other points that were more difficult, or things that surprised you that were difficult, or just surprises in general while making this?
I think that my idea of masculinity changed, and that I think is what surprised me. I didn't surprise me. I knew it was going to happen. I knew that it was going to be a process. But it became a much more nuanced. It became more subtle so in the beginning images, I'm like, ah, and, you know, my face is all scary and all of those things. And you know, the head of my graduate program walked in the studios one day, and she said that it all looks like Gap ads. So you know, just our Calvin Klein ads, just like underwear, you know, same kind of like basic poses. And so what surprised me was, like, by exploring masculinity through my own personal lens, the trans masculine lens, and then the academic lens, I was able to come out with the idea that masculinity doesn't have a face at all. There is too much nuance to lay claim to anything. There is, every type of man exists out there, and there's no amount of change for myself that is necessary to be a man. And so I think that, like, you know, the idea of, like, you have to be tough, you have to, like, keep, you know, just the basic things that, you know, toxic masculinity from a young, you know, childhood. I guess I didn't realize how much I had internalized that. You know, I want to be like, oh yeah, you know, I'm like, whoa, you know, like, men can cry, men can wear pink, all of that. But as a trans man, you kind of feel like you feel like you're prescribed to a hyper masculinity in order to pass. And this project made me realize that I can be myself, which, you know, sometimes really isn't hyper masculine, and that's okay. And so that really surprised me, I think.
Well, give me a moment. I'm just processing that, and I'm a little lost for questions, but I think for context for any of our viewers, I am non-binary, and I have felt some of those similar things that you're saying. Like, there's no one way to be anything. There's no face of femininity or masculinity, or and definitely resonating with, like, we'd like to think we've internalized less than we have, but we're all living in the same country, and, you know, going to the same schools and under the same laws, and etc. So it's a trip.
It is really wild.
Yeah. So and I guess my next question is more going to rely heavily on observation, because you are a person of color. How do you identify racially?
Black.
Okay. So as a Black man in in grad school and studio spaces, which are statistically white, did you find that there were any surprises because of your race, or any other pressures, or any other things coming up that maybe through observing from white peers that were kind of just surprising to you?
Yeah, I think, like, any Black person in academia knows that, you know, the second you go into a, like, theory class, for instance, and the week is intersectionality, you're the spokesperson for your entire race. For all of Black people, hi, I'm Evan. I represent the Black people, you know, all of, like, you know, we all are the same. So, you know, like, in that sense, yes. I also had, like, some issues with my being trans and people, like, failing at pronouns and things like that. But I went to grad school with the intent to become a professor. I became disillusioned, quite honestly, with the lack of Black bodies. It was me and one other Black person in my graduate program. In our first year, there was another person, but she dropped out. In the year that was coming in, that our second year is now, there's one Black person. The year before mine, there was one Black person. He was from Ghana. And so I went to college for creative studies in Detroit. Everybody there was white, you know, in a majority Black city. I realized that like what I want to do with academia is to create a truly equitable education for everybody, an arts education, and figure out how we do that. And quite frankly, the college is too late. So what it changed my entire course and life because of the lack of representation in higher education, especially in arts higher education. I mean, in all of higher education, but you know how like you've got all these people telling these stories, Black stories that have no business telling those stories. So ever since graduating, I was looking pretty much only at community arts, working with kids, kind of trying to provide them with a photographic voice to try and get a more diverse, like economical, racial, sexual orientation, just more diverse groups of kids coming into these art academia. And so what ended up happening on my birthday is a friend of mine works at University Prep Art and Design in Detroit, messaged me and said, hey, we're hiring a photography teacher. So that's a job that I just got. And so now I'm going to be teaching photography in Detroit. And so what I really, you know, hope to do is bring up these kids and get them, you know, as competitive as possible to get into these schools like SCAD, SAIC, and CCS and CCAD, and get them into these positions of power so they can tell their stories through their own lenses. Because there's too many National Geographic photographers out there fetishizing Black bodies, and I think that we need more Black kids and more Black photographers and more, you know, we've got Black Lives Matter protests raging everywhere, which is amazing, but they're being photographed by people who are just looking for violence, who are just looking for, you know, what we call, you know, photo porn. They're not, there's no, you know, what I was talking about in my talk about intent, there's no intent other than to get the most dramatic picture possible that you can swing as many ways as you can. And so we need to have photographers from those communities out there taking those pictures. And we can't do that in college when everybody's already, you know, we already picked those kids. So I really think just like coming back to my neighborhood and like working, you know, with my kids and is really important to me.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Congratulations, by the way, on the new job.
Thank you.
That's really exciting to hear.
Last second, like, oh, it was great.
So where does that, I guess, what are your feelings on that sort of thinking and gender more specifically? We're talking about, you know, how do we get these Black and brown kids into positions of power with all of their training? What I'm thinking of a time where in working in theater in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, we were talking about, as an institution, how are we talking to our patrons? Why are we using all of these pronouns when we really don't have to? And it's actually creating issues for our staff. And as the only non-cis person at the table, I was literally turned to, and it wasn't a popular conversation, and then it was my fault. So what do we do when we have these, you know, well-trained, well-educated students? What do we do institution-wise? What else needs to happen in your mind to make people successful?
I mean, to like allow success for students, or just make people successful in assisting those students?
I would say both, and I think one kind of follows two, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it's just really encouraging a like sense of unflinching respect for pronouns and respect for gender identity and expression. Like it is the constant correction from peers and things like that, creating a dynamic in which there is no option for misgendering. And that's difficult. That is really difficult. And I honestly didn't think it was possible until I worked at a summer camp in New Hampshire last summer. And it, you know, I started testosterone a week before I started working there. And it was, you know, it was a little scary. It was like they didn't have showers in the cabins, so it was like a group shower. It was my first experience being a man and being in male spaces. And what I found was, if you say who you are, and if you say, you know, and if the culture of where you are respects that, everybody will respect that. So it really is like starting from the top up. It's starting from administration. It's making sure that, you know, there's most simple things like putting pronouns at the end of your email signature, encouraging students to express themselves with their gender. If they, you know, if they're thinking about a name change and they want to, you know, change their name and they want to try that out at school, and they tell you, this is my name now, call them by that name. If they say my pronouns are this, their pronouns are that, call them by those pronouns. You know, as adults, we have to be really, really vigilant in protecting our trans youth, and protecting trans people in general. So like friends, family members, and things like that, because it shouldn't be up to the oppressed person to fix the oppressor's behavior. And I think what being a true ally is, in a comrade, a true comrade, is to take upon take that burden upon yourself, like cis people doing that, like, and really kind of like advocating for your trans family, your trans friends, and for trans kids. And even if you don't know any trans people, you know me now, so hey there. You know, just stand up for them. And if you make a mistake, say, oh, my bad, and move on. You know, everybody makes mistakes, and everybody and everybody slips up. I slip up all the time. When I first came out, I slipped up on my pronouns all the time. So, you know, and I still do. So it's not that anybody expects you to be infallible. It's just an effort. Simply just try.
Just simply try. Oh, like it could all really be so simple. I truly believe that. So now that your thesis has been defended, any plans to continue this work in the future? Any plans? Sorry, I'm trying to make sure I get this question in full. I really like that. Do you see this project growing, or next steps, or do you feel ready to let this live as it is for now?
So I've been doing a lot of thinking about that, because we're coming up on the anniversary, like the 1-year anniversary of the first photograph. So what I am thinking is doing the self-portraits in the exact same body positions, but with backgrounds. And by including the backgrounds, by including, you know, like by a tree or in the city or wherever, I feel like it's kind of adding a layer of comfortability within myself and my masculine identity. I don't know. I've been thinking about that. You know, now that I don't have like access to the same amount of equipment. You know, I am teaching art, so I have a little bit more access than I normally would. But, you know, I don't have a 44-inch roll printer and a giant light table anymore. So, you know, it's kind of like, how do I continue this work? And that's really what I've been focusing on, but a lot of thinking. The way my process works is I just think about it a lot, like over and over and over again, like obsessively. Sometimes I'll write notes on my phone in the middle of the night. And I actually did write one about this specifically. At like 12:30, I'll like tell my phone to to make notes. So I said the use of background signifies the idea that I'm comfortable with my body, comfortable enough with my body to bring it into the public sphere and show it and use, and just to show the comfortability of my surroundings and my body within the greater sphere.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
So when I send the invite for Overthinkers Anonymous, which email should I use?
elockhartphoto@gmail.com.
So in all seriousness, viewers, now you can reach Evan if you have any questions, or we are coming up on 1 p.m. How are we for time?
Sorry, I forgot where to unmute for a second. You're welcome to keep asking questions. Evan, I'll share the chat log with you afterwards, but it's just a bunch of just really wonderful words from the viewers who really appreciate your work, both as like an artist, but also in what you've talked about in terms of teaching. So I'll send all this praise your way, but it doesn't seem like many folks have questions. So we can give one last kind of ask your questions now or forever hold your peace. And Brittany, if you have any other questions, or if not, we can give this time for Evan to plug whatever he wants to plug.
Yeah, I have one last question, and then plug time as much as you want. What's next in terms of, or I guess I should start with, do you like to collaborate? And if so, what's next there?
So actually, I was thinking about doing a performance piece. Strangely enough, I wrote a poem, and I also have a writing from this small Weirs Beach Time in New Hampshire, the Weirs Beach Times last year, wrote an article called "Celebrate Xenophobia." And it goes, "Celebrate xenophobia, diversity be damned," is the first statement. And so I was thinking about doing a performance that juxtaposes with that, and doing that with a friend of mine who has his BFA in theater, and kind of like doing a performance piece and kind of like using signifiers such as like clothing, body language, in kind of like what I'm doing with my photography, but in the, temporal and non-permanent space of theater. So yeah. But I'm always open for collaborations.
I'm down with that. That sounds awesome. So that is all I have. Take it away. Any upcoming things, any social media things, plans, anything you should keep an eye on?
So just follow me at evanlo_photo. I'm gonna be trying to get a lot of opportunities for my students coming up, and I'm also going to be working on sometime post-COVID showing my thesis work in person, because it's very big and it deserves to be seen, not on this computer screen. So hopefully one day.
Right. Well, I will definitely be looking forward to that. I would love to see these full-sized. But Evan, thank you so much for talking with us. This was an awesome conversation. I hope we can have more.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah. All right. So everyone, thank you so much for joining us. We will be back next week, Wednesday at 12 again, with documentarian and creative producer Lintoria Newton. Keep an eye on our website, our Instagram. Thank you so much for joining us once again. Everyone have a great rest of your week. Enjoy your weekend. Stay safe out there. Thank you again, Evan. Take care.
Thank you.